and welcome to Cyberside Chats. My name is Sherry Davidoff. I'm the founder of LMG Security, and today I'm excited that we have a special guest, Tom Pohl.
And I'm Tom Pohl. I'm the penetration testing team manager here at LMG.
And I'm so excited to have you here, Tom, because every day, pretty much, you're telling me about some crazy hack that you've pulled on an organization. And you guys seem to get full domain admin access, like more than I have ever heard of. How often is it that you fully take over a network?
It's right now about 90% of the time.
That is amazing. And I know this even happens with companies that have had pen tests before. They don't expect it. They think they're locked down. So I want to know your secrets. I think we all want to know your secrets. And I think what gets me is that you're often telling me, whether it's a bank or a law firm or a hospital, you're often telling me about the same issues over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a lot of common misconfigurations or common mistakes that organizations make that really can lead to an unraveling and full takeover of an organization. So we help find all of those ways and report those to the organization so they can fix them.
Okay, so are you going to tell us your secrets today?
Today I'm going to cover a couple different prescient examples where have been able to fully compromise an organization. I think we're going to cover several different areas that are going to kind of probably resonate with a lot of folks in the audience.
Okay, great. Well, I know probably the most popular things you do are external penetration tests, where you try to break in from the internet, and internal penetration tests. And a lot of times people don't seem to realize how important those internal tests are because, you're already inside a network. Why does that matter?
Yeah, so often, we're going to only primarily focus on internal penetration testing today because often it's so easy to gain access to and compromise an endpoint. Clicking on a malicious link in an email or opening an attachment. A lot of times there's so many different avenues in. An attacker will gain access to an endpoint in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And so often our networks are built with a crunchy outer layer, right? So, but once you're on the inside, that ooey gooeyness, like what can you get to?
And ooey gooey middle.
Well,
and also we have to worry about inside attackers or a disgruntled employee or things like that. So whether they've accidentally clicked on a phishing link or whether it's somebody on the inside that's looking for information or access, that's what you guys are looking for, right? So you start like you're plugged into a conference room network, some kind of access like that.
That's exactly right. And we actually kind of hamstring ourselves a little bit because when an attacker takes over a computer or say you've got an insider threat, they likely already have a user credential on your network. And when we start as if, like you said, as if we're plugged into a conference room where we start with just IP access only, and then we spread out on your network from there.
So you don't have a username and password. You're literally just on the network.
Correct.
Okay, so let's start from there. I like stories, and so I asked Tom to come armed with a couple of stories. And I know you were originally going to talk about printers, and I was like, no more printers.
All right.
You could. Tom is always like, I got a printer, and then it's like, boom, full takeover. So if you want to hear more about that, he actually has a great video on YouTube about how he starts with a printer, and this happens all the time, and then takes over, I think in that case, like an Amazon cloud instance or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's just one instance.
Yeah, but today we've made it so you can't talk about printers.
All right.
What are you going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about uninterruptible power supply, or a UPS. How about that?
That's cheating.
It's cheating. So I mean, it's the same kind of a principle, right? So what happens is you've got devices on your network, and those devices will have defaults. And have you changed the defaults or in a meaningful way?
Okay, so this is a real pen test that you guys did.
100%.
And this was what, a bank?
This particular case was a bank.
So you're hacking a bank.
It was actually a reasonably sized bank.
Okay.
And they had a UPS on the network. So basically UPS, you plug your servers in, so if the power goes out, they stay active. And we discovered they had these UPSs also plugged into the network so they could manage it. And also, the most important part why you would do that is if there's a bad battery or you actually go on battery backup power, it'll send alerts. Well, in order to send an alert, you got to be able to send email. In order to send email, that means you probably need to be able to go log into an email server in order to send the email message.
So unbeknownst to most people, your UPS can actually log into your network so that it can send the emails.
Correct.
And therein lies the problem.
Yeah. So then if we come across the UPS, and we can use, either a guest credential or in this particular case is a default credential. Then we can log into that management interface, and the interface won't tell us what the username and password are. They're actually usually pretty smart about that.
Does it like blank out the password or something?
If you right-click reveal password, it'll be all stars, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to give you.
Game over.
Oh, I guess we can't get that password. Well, that's not true. What happens is you can change the server, and instead of talking to the legitimate email server, you're going to talk to my illegitimate server.
So you're pretending you're the email server, and you're like, hey, UPS, talk to me.
So yeah, this is your new server now. I'm not changing the username and password. I'm just changing the server, which doesn't reset the username and password. And then I say, go ahead and send me a test email. And the first thing it does is connects to me, sends me those credentials, and now I have domain level credentials, typically in this particular case, in order to then be able to expand onto your network.
So this was not an admin credential. Now you have
No.
like a normal username and password.
Correct.
Okay, so like that's not such a big deal, right? What can you get with that?
So a normal username and username and password on your network typically has access to a lot of unintended data, right? So there's you can go after file shares, you can go after domain connected services, you can go after lots of things that you may not realize that all of your users on your network may have access to, and you don't even know it.
Right.
Because if you're not actually testing your network as a regular user that doesn't have privileges, because let's be honest, how many people out there, well, I'm an administrator, of course I'm going to have access to all the shares.
Right.
That they're not also going back and saying, wait, let me test this entire network as if I'm not an administrator and make sure that there's no data out there that would compromise my organization.
Well, this goes back to two issues. Number one, role-based access control. I think, unfortunately, sometimes the most powerful concepts in cybersecurity are also like boring. Like, this is not a sexy topic. Role-based access control. Make sure that people only have access on a need-to-know basis. We've known that for like 30 years, you guys.
I'm not doing rocket surgery here.
It's not rocket appliances. But yeah, I mean, it seems like it's still an issue today. And also, sensitive data in file shares as well is an issue.
Exactly.
So those two issues combined make it so that you can go from zero to full takeover. Right?
100%. And in this particular case, we didn't actually use the access that we had on file shares in order to completely take over.
You just had fun and poked around
We
a little
just
bit.
had fun. And, we'll often see like scripts, right? Like you'll have like scripts in a directory, and administrators used to put passwords in scripts.
We're going to get to that in our next case study.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't scoop us.
All right, I won't scoop it. But in this particular case, we actually started looking at what other services are available in the organization. And we found a service called Active Directory Certificate Services.
Ding, ding, ding. Okay, you guys, I think half the time you tell me you've taken something over these days, it's because of Active Directory Certificate Services. And nobody is talking about this. It's a simple misconfiguration, right? That allows you guys to go from a normal user to, in this case, a full-on domain admin.
Correct.
So tell us about this common misconfiguration that you may well have on your network.
Yeah, so the larger the organization, the more. So what Active Directory Certificate Services is basically public key infrastructure. So like a certificate authority, it basically issues certificates. Which
like a hall pass for a computer that wants to access other things. We have lots of videos on that on YouTube if you want to know more about certificate services.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so in this particular case, when you install it, often by default, you're enabling a web interface so that the web interface can issue your certificates. And if you have that set up with the default configuration, actually up until recently, there's some new Microsoft updates that are changing it a little bit, which finally, but by default in most people's organizations, if you've implemented this more than about 6 months ago and you've enabled the web interface, I can take advantage of that. And in this particular case, what I did was I was able to use my regular non-privileged user account and talk to a domain controller with it and get it to talk to me in a special way that I basically get on your network and I'll lie to you. Like I'll tell the server, hey, I want you to come log into me, and I'll take that and I'll redirect that to your Active Directory Certificate Services and get it to give me a certificate that belongs to the domain controller. So that now the Active Directory Certificate Services now says, oh, you authenticated to me correctly, so here's a certificate for the domain controller.
So you're tricking Active Directory certificate services into giving you a certificate that allows you to pretend to be the domain controller.
Exactly.
So you're impersonating the domain controller. And this is crazy. This is a default configuration up till about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
You guys check your networks. Okay, so now you can pretend to be the domain controller just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And,
okay.
And then once I can be the domain controller, I can go to another domain controller, and there's a function called a DC sync. It's just basically the way that domain controllers talk to each other and say, hey, this user updated their password. I need that password hash. And so you can actually talk to other domain controllers and get the password hashes of any user or all the users.
Is that what you did? You dumped them all?
Yeah, we dump them all. And because we'll then do a password audit. Like, we may see that your password policy has been updated to, require 16 characters or 20 characters or whatever, but did you go back and force all your users to change those passwords? Sometimes not. And so we'll audit those. And then we can also audit your domain administrator account. Once we have that domain administrator hash, we are your domain administrator because we can pass the hash and log into anything that does NTLM authentication on your network.
So, okay, what do you do with password hashes? You have a password cracking rig. Do you want to tell us about this real quick?
Yeah, so we've got a couple really good password cracking rigs here at LMG Security, and we have a secret weapon. Her name is Emily, who has been instrumental in the entire password cracking industry for cracking passwords. And so we've got lots of different rule sets and a lot of hashing power so we can guess passwords. And if you guess the password and you get the hash, you figured out what that password was. And so we've got machines that will guess millions and millions of passwords every second and figure out how many passwords we can figure out.
Great. Doesn't Emily have a team at B-Sides where they crack things?
Well, at DEF CON, she's part of the organization, the group that has won the password cracking contest for the last 10 years.
Congrats, Emily.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you go and crack your passwords, and poof, you've taken over this bank. Probably very surprising for them.
Very surprising, yeah. And especially in organizations where they've done some of the low-hanging fruit. Like we've been doing this. We just had one this week where they're like, we've been doing this for 10 years. We don't think you're going to find anything, and we were able to surprise them in ways because that's just one technique. We've got so many different techniques. We could be here all day.
If you guys have questions about how to detect or fix that ADCS issue, for example, what's the best way to reach you?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Tom Pohl. It's P-O-H-L. It's like the Kohl's department store, but with a P. Yeah.
Or info@lmgsecurity.com gets to both of us and the rest of our team. So either one of those, if you have tech questions, feel free to drop us a line. We're happy to help. Okay, I heard you also took over a law firm in a different way, and I thought this was a really interesting case. So tell us how you totally pwned this law firm and how we can protect ourselves from the same thing.
Yeah, and this law firm case kind of demonstrates some more default functionality on your domain, and this is where we actually observed that they had legacy broadcast protocols enabled. Right?
You're doing an internal pen test.
Internal pen test.
You're on the network.
We're on the network, and we see that there's computers saying, hey, does anybody know how to talk to this file server? And nobody's responding, but they're still asking the question. And so,
oh man,
if somebody asks me a question, I'm going to give them a wrong answer. I'm going to say, oh yeah, I know how to get to that file server. It's right here.
So nice, but you're so evil inside. Okay, so they're using what protocol? SMB?
They're using like LLMNR or NetBIOS, some of these legacy broadcast protocols that basically will ask the network, hey, does anybody know how to get here or get there? And we will gladly use it. We'll use a tool like Responder that will give wrong answers, right? And we'll say, yep, that's us. Or we'll use that in conjunction with another tool and relay that traffic onto another server. So we'll both lie to the server about who we are, and we'll lie to the client who we are, because we'll just lie to anybody that we can. And we'll do what's called a man-in-the-middle attack. And the reason why that's possible is because the client network is not doing what's called SMB signing.
And this is super common. I hear about SMB signing or lack thereof from you all the time. It seems like this is one of your first footholds into the network.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's a first foothold. Sometimes people fix this, but in this particular case, I mean, if I can convince a machine to talk to me, and there's several different ways that you need to enable SMB signing.
Okay.
So there's from a server side aspect where the server is requiring that the client does server signing or does SMB signing with the server. There's client signing where it says the client's like, okay, I'm not going to talk to the server if the server doesn't support SMB signing.
SMB signing basically makes it so you can verify that the computer at the other end is who they say they are. Just like when you sign a contract and I'm like, yes, that is Tom Pohl signing that contract. So when the messages from computer to computer are signed, then that means they can cryptographically verify it's not an imposter. And by default, it sounds like SMB signing is not turned on, correct?
Correct. Typically on most Active Directory networks until the very latest versions of
They're
Windows.
on to you.
Until the very latest versions, the only machines by default that have SMB signing enabled from a server perspective are domain controllers.
Okay, so the rest of your network is not signing, and that means you can man in the middle all kinds of different communications.
Yes, and this is a good step in the right direction. There's other techniques that I can use that aren't going to be solved by just SMB signing. But in this particular example, it's the combination, it's a 1-2 punch between a legacy broadcast protocol and SMB signing, which is the reason why I can now take an end user's computer and make it log into any other resource on the network that I want it to.
Okay.
And once I did that, then I got an end user to log into, like, say, a file server in this particular case.
So you're in the middle.
So I'm in the middle.
So the user says, I want to go to a file server. And you say, I'm the file server. And it says, cool, I'm going to log into you. And you say, okay, file server, I'm going to relay that on. And you're in the middle of these communications.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And so once I'm in the middle of that and they are basically logging in for me, then I can use that logged in connection to gain access to all the resources that user would have on the network server.
Okay, so at this law firm, what did you do?
So in this particular case,
like I've been doing this more than in any other Cyberside Chats episode.
In this particular case, they had what's called a deployment share, and so there's deployment services on your network. So, like, say you get a brand new computer. And IT doesn't want to have to hit next done on every piece of software to get it installed. And so there's deployment tools that Windows or Microsoft puts out that lets you basically script out installing the computer on all the software with the options that you want, and then joining it to the domain. And once it's joined to the domain, then it's kind of got the full trust relationship and anybody can log into it. Well, if you misconfigure the deployment share, you're actually putting some credentials in clear text that then potentially anybody on the network could go read and access. And we've been on so many networks where these deployment shares are not fully secure. And in fact, often, so there's a feature of file shares that some system administrators know that they think are being sneaky. And that's where if you name a file share with a $sign on the end, it hides the share name from a regular user.
Oh, so, I bet you love finding
because
those.
There's typical like $, and $D, some of those default shares that then they don't show up for end users, but they're actually still there. And if it's like super secret documents $sign, that means that somebody's hiding something there, right? And often
that's the good stuff.
I always tell my team $signs mean $signs, right? Like so for an attacker like myself, when I get on your network and I see a share that's not a typical hidden share, I'm like, there's an administrator that's hiding something there. And so we will try to gain access to that and figure out what it is that they're hiding. And often it's a credential that has high privileges in your network. So like on the deployment share example, it was a domain administrator. So at that point,
so you've now gained access to this file share with a domain administrator account.
Yeah.
And there's a service that allows them to deploy new computers, and hard-coded in one of these scripts is a domain admin username and password. That at that point, it's game over.
It's game
right?
over.
It's game over.
Yep.
So that gets back to the sensitive data in file shares issue. So that was in one of those hidden file shares?
Yeah. Yep.
Ooh, that's a good tip. So remember to look at your hidden file shares, which might not show up for every user.
Right.
But people can still access that. And then also secure your deployment services, of course, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And there's good guidance out there from Microsoft on how to do it the right way. And actually, often some people's networks now they're starting to catch on. Like the user account that you use to join that computer to the domain doesn't need to be a domain administrator account. It just needs the privilege of being able to join a computer to
Did
a
you
domain.
just take off your glasses because you're good Tom now, and now you're evil Tom again?
You can't tell. Now I'm evil. Now I'm good.
Oh, wow.
Which way is it?
Okay, well, that was a lot of information, but I know we're only scratching the surface. You teach a class on pentest for IT pros, which is soon going to be available on demand, correct?
That's right.
You want to tell us about that for just a moment?
So I'm really passionate about teaching people how to look at the low-hanging fruit on their network. You know, often if you're going to do like an internal penetration test in your organization and you've never done one before, I can almost write the report before showing up because I know what's typically found in your organization. And so what this class does, it helps give you the tools like what I use in order to look at your networks critically and try to take care of a lot of that low-hanging fruit. So then when I do come in for the first time and do a penetration test, we're going to make my consultants cry more. We're going to have to make them work for it.
That sounds like fun.
It's so much fun.
So, okay, well, let's go over some of those common issues. Number one, we talked about default or weak credentials, and don't forget to look at those printers and UPSs and security cameras because Tom will get you.
Everyone.
If anybody gets a foothold on those, game over. Number two, sensitive information in file shares. Clean them out, check them on a regular basis. And I'd also add to that, making sure you have role-based access control, that a low-level user can't get access to things that they shouldn't.
Harden Active Directory certificate services. There's good tools out there to audit those services and make sure that they're configured in a secure, proper way. Often there's a couple things by default that are insecure, but then if you try to start customizing it yourself, I've seen more often than not people get themselves into trouble and make things even more insecure.
Right. Make sure you're enforcing SMB signing everywhere so that computers are required to authenticate each other, and Tom and his team can't just jump in the middle of those communications because I know you do that all the time.
All the time. And then lastly, disable legacy protocols. So, you know, the services that will like blindly ask and trust anybody in the network, how do I get to a thing? Turn those off. They're unneeded and they're critically important to defend against having an attacker on the network do bad things.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being our special guest today, Tom. Really great to have you on here. Excited also about your class, which will be coming out soon. Everybody, for those of you that are here live, stick around and we'll do a live Q&A, so get ready to enter questions in. And with that, thanks for joining us at Cyberside Chats. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. All right, questions. For anyone who has questions, free consulting from Tom. While people are getting ready, here's a question. Rodrigo says, how do you suggest securing internal mobile apps?
Internal mobile apps. So, you know, this comes into a couple different ways. There's apps on the phone as well as, you know, is this a kind of a bring your own device? You know, you might want to deploy a mobile device management software so that you can control how things are configured.
Yeah, and then if it's a mobile app that someone has created in your organization or a third party,
get it tested.
Yeah, I mean, you guys test mobile apps all the time.
All the time. Yeah, we test internal apps, we test external apps, we test software as a service apps. Yeah, all sorts of different types of applications. So definitely get them tested because often there may be things in the app itself or even in the API backend that it's communicating with that needs security.
I want to know common vulnerabilities that you find in web and mobile apps. So maybe that's for another day.
Another day.
Another day. Okay. Let's see. Loretta says, does MFA help prevent any of these attacks? What a great question.
So certain types of services can be MFA enabled. The ones that we've been talking about today are not really MFA enableable. So talking to SMB by default doesn't have capability of being MFA enabled. There are some layered on technologies that you can do, but they're janky at best. The things where I've seen MFA on the internal network really work well is like controlling access to remote desktop protocol and management of internal interfaces on these devices.
You know, another thing that I think would actually help is network segmentation, right?
100%.
So that you actually can't get access to things.
Exactly. Yeah. Should I, as a regular user, be able to talk to your UPS?
Yeah.
Probably not. It should probably be on a special segment that only a small subset of people are able to even knock on the door of.
Right. You know, my dad had a 30-person accounting firm, and this was about 10 years ago. I helped him design the network, and I think we had his outside IT folks run and ride it because I was like, no, these workstations shouldn't be able to talk to this server, only on this port, blah, blah, blah. And then we went to do a pen test, and we were stuck. We couldn't see anything. And it really does show you, no matter what your organization size, having your network segmentation really locked down can foil hackers and pen testers alike. But you still need defense in depth. Loretta, you have a great follow-up question here. I actually meant to cover this in the podcast. What can be done for networks where SMB signing might break an app, for example, a legacy app? Excellent question.
Yeah, so limit the context, right? Does that SMB signing legacy app need to be able to talk to every server in the organization, or is there just one, right? Or maybe you can compartmentalize and say, hey, we're going to have a server that machine talks to, and then segment that, right? So that machine can only talk to that other machine for that legacy application, and not, don't disable it across your entire organization just because one application needs to talk to one thing insecurely.
Yep. Oh, we got one more. What technical skills do you think are the most important for a pen tester? Ooh.
Creativity.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on a pen tester. Personally, I can teach anybody skills. The thing that I can't teach is the desire and passion, and then also being able to write effectively and express the vulnerabilities in a way that the client can understand. Because at the end of the day, we're getting paid for a report that can help with actionable items for the organization to fix their network, and that's key.
Yep, absolutely. I think for those of you that are thinking of getting into pen testing, or just IT folks that want to know more about the pen testing world, I know you're always telling people to do Hack the Box. Sure. And do you have any other recommendations?
Yeah, Hack the Box, try Hack Me. Get involved in Capture the Flag events. There's ctftime.org. I think there's one probably every day of the week practically. Right. Where, go out there and start learning.
Again, thanks so much for your time today, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye.